Hey guys, Urban Combat Survivor here. I've been promising you guys to do a video for those who don't have basic knowledge of firearms, um, about ammunition and giving you guys the basics so that if and when you go out to pick up a primary weapon, you're not overwhelmed with all these esoteric looking numbers that are all over the stuff. What I've done is I've gotten myself two different brands of shotgun shells here. And they have largely the same information on the boxes, and really it's just a bunch of numbers. So I'm going to go down the line here of the ones on the Winchester box for the Winchester ammo and explain what each of these things mean. So um, it says 12 gauge, which is the gauge of the shotgun. What the gauge of a shotgun is this. They have this old esoteric way of determining the bore, which is the size of the hole that a bullet travels down in a barrel. What they do is this. They take a lead ball, a perfect sphere, the exact size of the hole that the bullet travels down. They then, once they have the exact size, they weigh it, and they determine how many of those lead balls will equal 1 pound. That's the gauge of your shotgun. So, for instance, if you were to get a 12 gauge shotgun and make a perfect sphere that exactly fit down the bore, it would take 12 of those spheres to equal 1 pound of lead. It's a weird way of doing things. It goes back to some gunsmithing thing a long time ago. I have no idea why. And I don't think it's really important to know why for this video. The thing about it that you need to understand is that the numbers are counterintuitive a little bit, because the larger a gauge, the smaller the bullet. That's because, for instance, a 12 gauge, it'll take 12 of those lead spheres to make 1 pound. A 20 gauge, there's going to be smaller sphere. So that means instead of 12 of those balls to make 1 pound, it'll take 20 of them to make 1 pound. So understand that when you're looking at gauge, bigger numbers mean a smaller bore. It's kind of the other way around with rifles, so it's backwards. At least, I guess, to American thinking or modern American thinking. The next number you're looking at will give you this, for instance, is 2 3/4 inches. That is the length of the shell overall once it's opened, because this is closed on the top right now. I'm going to try to zoom in and show you. The front of this shell is pinched. It's like a it's pinched over. That is what holds the shot inside there. When you shoot it, these flaps push up, so that shell is actually going to wind up a little bit longer than it is right at this moment. The next number is velocity. For instance, these say 1,200 feet per second. That means that's the muzzle velocity, meaning that is how fast the projectile is moving at the moment it leaves the end of your gun. So that means 1,200 feet per second is how fast it's moving when it leaves. It doesn't maintain that speed for very long. It slows down as soon as it starts leaving. The next number is a weird one. It's dr.eq. That is a dram equivalent. That is it's a throwback like legacy thing that tells you the equivalent to make that much powder if you were using the old black powder. So the higher the number on the dr.eq, or the dram equivalent, means the more powerful the shell is, or the more powerful the blast will be when you fire it. The next thing is the ounces. Most of the ones I've seen say 1 1/8 ounce. If they don't say that, they're probably cheaper shells. I have a box of those here. I'm actually using it for the example. That is the total weight of all of the pellets inside, or the slug. And the last thing is the number, and it says shot. What that means is inside your shell here, unless you're using slugs, I'll get there in a second, there's a bunch of little balls like BBs. Um, the size of those BBs is called the gauge, or I'm sorry, yeah, it's the gauge of the. Yeah, I don't want this to be confusing. Each one of these little balls has its own gauge. Inside, for instance, a double-aught buck means the size of the little pellets in there are 00. The higher that number gets, the smaller the balls inside. It works just like the bore of a shotgun. So, double-aught is bigger than number 4 buck. Number 4 buck, the pellets are bigger than number 6 buck, and so on and so forth. So I hope that explained fairly easily about all those silly numbers. Not silly, but all those esoteric numbers if you don't know what you're looking at. Now I'm going to move over to... let me get the slugs real quick. The way slugs go is this. Inside your shotgun, there is either rifling or not. Inside, let's assume this is a shotgun barrel. Inside where the bullet comes out, if there are grooves that run down slowly around inside, that's called rifling. My shotgun is a smooth bore, so I buy rifled slugs, which means the bullets, the projectiles themselves, a slug is basically just a hunk of lead. The lead bullet itself on a rifled slug has grooves cut in it that go around. What that does is it causes the bullet, as it's leaving the gun, to spiral. Think football. Everyone's heard of a perfectly thrown spiral. When something is spiraling as it flies, it has a more stable flight. If it's spinning as it flies, the flight path is more stable. So rifling causes the projectile to spin, which means it's more accurate to a further distance. That's important. So if you get a smooth bore shotgun, you're probably going to want to get rifled slugs. At least that's what I did, because it gives me a greater accuracy range. Now, I'm going to hop over to rifles. I have a box of that stuff here as well. There's a little bit less on there, but the numbers still might be intimidating, so I'm going to try to explain those. My SKS that I purchased uses these. Let me zoom in. It doesn't matter. This is a cheapy brand, but if you can see it there, it says 7.62 by 39 is the first big number. What that means is this. 7.62 is the diameter, the circumference there, of that copper bullet on the end here. That is 7.62 millimeters. If you convert that in Google Conversion or whatever, it'll tell you it's a 0.3 of an inch, which is caliber. So if you hear caliber, it's using SAE math. If you hear millimeter, it's using metric math. Any of you that use any kind of tools will pretty quickly recognize the difference there. So a 7.62 millimeter is exactly the same as a 30 caliber, which means the bullet itself on the end here for any 7.62 rifle is the same as for any 30 caliber rifle. They're the same bullet on the end. That second number where it says by 39, that X is, when spoken, it's 7.62 by 39. So what that means is from the bottom of the bullet here, this edge of this gray case, to the very end is 39 millimeters. So in there it has your primer and your powder. When you fire the gun, the primer hits the end here. See that little ring in the middle? That's your primer. Your pin hits that. That causes a pop. It ignites the gunpowder inside this shell, which causes pressure and makes that bullet fly off. That bullet then flies down your barrel, In a rifle, it's going to be a rifled barrel. Remember, that's them grooves that run down the barrel. And that's going to cause the bullet to spin as it flies, stabilizing its path and making it more accurate. So I hope that explained those fairly simply. That's my understanding of it. I'm sure some of you gun guys will probably feel like I should have gone into a bunch more detail about this or that about it, but that's the basics. So now I've gone over shotgun gauge, the different numbers on shotgun ammunition, and the difference between pellets and slugs, and ammo here. One more thing about rifle ammo. There are different kinds. The box I just held up there. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get to the rest of the numbers real quick. This also says 123 grain. That is the weight of the copper bullet on the end here. So the heavier that grain, the bigger this bullet. The heavier this bullet on the end. That's pretty much all the numbers that are on this here. So I think the rifle shell is now explained. So 39 millimeters is this part. So if you see like a NATO round, a 308 NATO is actually a 7.62 by 51, which means this part is longer, so it holds more powder, so the bullet goes further. Another common one is a 5.56 by 39, which means this bullet is thinner around and smaller, and the cartridge here is about the same. So smaller bullet, doesn't do as much damage. There are different types. This says FMJ on the box. That means full metal jacket. What that means is this. This copper is only the outside of the bullet. It holds like a jacket a lead bullet inside. The lead adds weight. The jacket adds strength between the two. I also purchased HP rounds, which means hollow point. What that basically means is there's a little divot in the front here that causes the bullet to expand when it hits something. So full metal jacket means there's a lead bullet inside and it's contained within a metal jacket. In this case, copper, usually copper, zinc, something harder than lead. And HP means hollow point. So my hollow points are bimetal hollow points, meaning basically it's the same thing as a full metal jacket. It's lead with a copper jacket, but it has a divot on the tip of it instead of just being that smooth point. And that divot will cause it to expand when it hits something. So I hope I've explained the numbers in a way that any of you that didn't understand them and were intimidated by them can see now what they are. It's not that hard. I know it's seems like a little bit much, but once you watch this video a few times, I hope you'll have them down pat and things will be good. So I hope any of you who are holding off buying a primary weapon because you're so intimidated by it, I'm hoping that by the time I'm done doing these couple of videos, you'll really understand and feel like when you go to pick up a primary weapon, you know what you're looking at and it makes sense to you. So if you have any questions or I wasn't clear on anything, please leave comments and I'll try to explain in the next video anything I may have missed here. Urban Combat Survivor, signing off.